then they took me to the recovery room. And by the time I got to the recovery room, all of a sudden I was having all kinds of complications. My blood pressure was up like 40 points. My heart rate was at like 100 beats per minute or something, lying still. And I was spiking a big fever. And so my memory of waking up from the surgery was 3 nurses moving really fast. I was like, oh, that's not what I was expecting.
That's not good. Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of the 1-on-1 nurse, I had 3-on-1. I thought, oh, actually, this isn't good.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to Facing Giants, where we explore stories of struggle, strength, and resilience to help encourage you against whatever giants you may be facing. Today, I'm here with a friend, Rich. Kind of known him from around the way. And today, we'll be talking about organ donation. So he's the brother-in-law of Marcia, who we spoke to previously. And Marcia was the recipient of Richard's kidney. Hello, Richard.
How's it going?
Doing pretty good. How are you today?
Great.
Good. I'm pretty excited to talk to you
I'm looking forward to it too.
because Marcia's story was pretty incredible. And it'd be interesting to see kind of the other side of the organ donation recipient relationship. Because this is something that I can't say I've talked to 2 people about in my entire life. I don't think it's something that gets talked about enough, especially for something that has such a significant impact on the trajectory of someone's life, right?
Agreed.
So prior to donating your kidneys, like what was your life like? What were you into? Like, are you into sports? Are you into...
Oh yeah, I love sports. I do a lot of like cross-country skiing and basketball and camping and hiking and all that kind of stuff. Pretty active. I've done some ultra running as well.
What's that?
Like, super long distance trail runs.
Like how long?
The longest I've gone is 85 kilometers.
Straight.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
It was in a 24-hour race that we took part in. My first race was 43K. Now, when I say race, I mean, I'm a participant. I'm not racing.
Yeah, if you didn't come first, second, or third, you're a participant.
That's it.
So,
And it's
yeah.
and I do that just because I like being there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do a lot of that kind of stuff. Pretty active in our church community. We've got 2 now teenagers, and so very busy with them and getting them to where they need to be.
Yeah, for sure. I forgot to ask you, I guess, the most important question. Where are you from and how old are you?
43 years old. I'll be 44 at the end of this month. I grew up in Southern Ontario.
Where?
In Aurelia, Ontario was
Nice.
where I went to high school. And then moved here to Thunder Bay in 2001 to go to school. Then after we graduated, moved back down there for a little while. And then my wife and I brought our kids back up here in 2016.
Okay.
Because we like it here.
Good.
Yeah.
So give me the backdrop of the day where you learned that someone you loved was going to be requiring some assistance.
So we'd known for a while that there was a chance she would need a transplant at some point. When she first started having issues with her kidneys, she was explaining it to the family, just saying, it's likely that it's going to keep declining over time. No idea when or how fast or any of that. But it's possible that I will need a new kidney at some point. And none of us really got it. So there's in their family, there's 5 sisters.
No brothers.
No brothers. And I think there's 4 brothers-in-law now. And we all kind of knew, and we're like, oh, that's terrible. But none of us really kind of grasp what a giant issue this is, and how it would affect her life until it started getting really bad. She started getting really sick. And then we started noticing, oh, okay, this is a really big deal. As I remember, when her kidney function really tanked, she was told, you're going to need dialysis and probably a transplant soon. Dialysis is where they remove your blood and filter it mechanically and put it back in. and it's a miracle treatment that keeps people alive. It also is temporary. You usually only can dialyze for 15-ish years before your body stops letting it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a cure.
Right.
So yeah, Marcia and her husband Brennan decided that they wanted to have their second child before transplant. And not far into her pregnancy is when her kidney function really, really dropped, and she had to start going on dialysis. And they were lucky enough to get that set up in their home, so she didn't have to go to the hospital 6 days a week for that while she was pregnant. She went through all that time of dialysis while she was pregnant, and then once the baby was born, she got to go a little bit less on dialysis, and that's kind of when she put it out there and said, "Yeah, my kidney doctor has said I need to start looking for a donor." And she didn't specifically ask any of us, but my wife and me and a friend of theirs all said, "Okay, well, what do we do? How do we find out how to be a donor?" My wife and Marcia's friend both went through all the testing first. If you get cleared from the blood by the blood testing, you get cleared that there's nothing, no blood in your urine, that kind of stuff, then they will move on to what they call the 1-day donor clinic, where you get a lot of imaging done. You get a heart scan, a lot more blood work, and then they take all that data and then decide whether you're going to be an eligible donor. My wife went that was in the spring of 2001, May of 2001. She went and had the 1-day clinic done. And she said that by 10 in the morning, she knew that she was not going to be eligible. Because the first thing you do is you go and you have a CT scan of your kidney with the chromatic dye, where they can see all the vessels and stuff. And then the next imaging that you have done is in nuclear medicine, where they inject you with a radioactive substance that then the CT can pick up, and they let you watch. It's really, really cool. You're lying there and you have to lie perfectly still, and there's this screen in front of you that's just blank. But then suddenly, eventually all these little white dots start showing up on the screen, and then they get bigger and brighter and bigger and brighter. And you realize, oh, those are my kidneys. And the white dots are the stuff that's being filtered out.
Right.
And so you watch in real time your body filter this impurity out of the blood.
Yeah.
And she said she could tell that one of her kidneys was doing way more than the other. It was getting brighter faster than the other one. So she was like, I've got a real imbalance in function, and they're probably going to deny me. But she went through the rest of the day anyway. And sure enough, a couple of weeks later, she got a call saying, yeah, you're not going to be able to donate.
For that reason.
Yeah. So two reasons. So she was ineligible, partly because, it turns out her left kidney does 60% of the filtration. So they couldn't take it, because that would leave her with only 40% filtration. They could have taken the 40% one and given it to Marcia, because compared to what was going on in her body, that would be still be a massive jump. But the initial scan that they did on my wife showed that she has 2 arteries feeding her right kidney. A normal kidney, or an anatomically normal kidney, only has 1 artery and 1 vein. And they won't transplant an abnormal organ, just because on the installation end, it doesn't tend to go as well. So she couldn't give her right because it was abnormal, couldn't give her left because she'd be left with too little function. So that was really disappointing.
I got a question. Are you fearful at all to donate a kidney? Because it's a surgery that it requires. So you got to go under anesthesia, and that comes with a risk, and you're getting an organ removed. So that comes with some risk. And now your future self is going to be operating without an organ that was originally there. So is there any fear that you or your wife or anyone undergoing this process had about, or hesitancy about giving up an organ?
Well, I'd be scared to now.
Well, you got one. Yeah, don't do it now.
Yes, there was definitely some fear. I didn't, honestly, not a lot, less than expected. The only time that I really at all had any feeling of real panic or fear was the morning of the surgery for about 10 minutes in the pre-op area. But generally, I was pretty at peace with the whole idea.
Okay.
And the amount of testing that they do on the donor really helps with the fear, because you don't go in if you're not in great shape.
Right.
Like, they will not operate on you. They will not do this surgery if the donor is has even remotely high blood pressure, because the kidney's a huge part of regulating blood pressure, is something that I learned. If you have any comorbidities, or just, if there's any chance that it's not going to go well, they're not going to take the risk. And the way the one surgeon explained it to me, he said that this is the only surgery that we do where the patient has no benefit. So I was not afraid. I don't know how the others felt when they were kind of going through the workups, but it really does. It is reassuring. And I've said to a few people since that, if you ever want to know what kind of shape you're in, go get worked up to be an organ donor, because they will put you through your paces and make sure you're okay.
Yeah. I'm curious, because I talked to Marcia about this, and the answer that we came up with was, so the question was, why would anyone give up one of their organs, right? And I think the answer we came up with was that the thought of living without Marcia is harder than the thought of living without a kidney. So it almost makes it easy to just give up your kidney. So I'm wondering if that was the mindset that you just had, like, this is what we're doing. There's no hesitancy. Like, I would rather lose a kidney than lose Marcia type.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay.
There was no deliberating. There was no waffling. It didn't take long to make the decision. She put out the call that she's been told she needs a transplant, and immediately I was like, oh, I'll get tested. Yeah. And other donors who I've spoken to since kind of say the same thing, that it's a really quick decision.
Yeah. So I thought that was cool. I came to that realization during the conversation, and it just makes total sense.
And sorry, on that as well, I happened to have someone in my life who needed it. I would happily have done it for someone I didn't know too.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because I had two. You really only need one.
Is there no risk? Like,
barely any? Shocking.
There's no increased strain on your current kidney?
The measure that they use for kidney function is called GFR. I can't pronounce the word that it stands for.
Glomerular filtration rate.
Thank you. And going in, mine was 90. It's now kind of high 60s. So I'm still well within the normal healthy range. My risk of dying from kidney malfunction, or from anything related to my kidneys, has gone up by something like 1%.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like, when you look at the numbers, it doesn't change your expected outcome, your life expectancy, anything at all.
Do you feel any difference in your day-to-day functioning? Do you feel like maybe you've got less, because you're a pretty active guy. Do you feel like your energy output is a little less, or anything like that?
It was at first. For about 7 or 8 months, had a really hard time regulating my heart rate and blood pressure, and being active was a real struggle for a while. Now, no, not at all. I don't feel any. If I didn't have the scar, I wouldn't know that I'd done this.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the only kind of lifestyle adjustments that I've had to make are, I can't take Advil or any anti-inflammatories now. And if I get dehydrated, it tends to be worse than it was before. And that can happen a little faster than it could before. So I have to be a little bit more on hydration.
Yeah, that
But
makes
honestly,
sense.
that's all I notice.
Interesting. For some reason, I thought the symptoms that you would experiencing with one kidney would be much more severe, and probably your risk further down the road for further health complications. I thought they were going to be much higher, but you're saying it's 1%
Yeah,
increased risk for kidney.
I think that's what they told me.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really low. Like
Mhm.
there's me versus you. There's no difference in how our life expectancy based on those factors. And you could very well be living on one kidney.
And you just don't even know.
You don't know it. Yeah,
Yeah.
the radiologist or the not radiologist, the technician, when I was having the scan done where you can watch your kidneys do the filtration, she said she's had a number of potential donors discover that they're living on one kidney.
Unbelievable.
That, like, you know, they show up and one is just like a shriveled little bit.
Wild.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah. But it makes you wonder why biologically we have two then, if we can. And I guess the answer to that is because if one fails, at least you've got a backup. And without kidneys, you don't live very long.
No,
Yeah.
you don't.
I asked Marcia the same question, but I think it's a very important one. It was one of the most burning questions that I had. Like, what does this do for your relationship with her? Did it change your relationship with her at all?
Interesting question. Yes, we have a very permanent bond now.
Yeah.
You know, part of the recovery process for me was it didn't take long to get there, but I had to come to the point where I no longer referred to it as my kidney.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Marcia's kidney that I used to have, is how I have to frame it for myself. And so that part of the bond, like, I don't think about. It doesn't feel quite as was like intense as you might expect. I don't think about her having my kidney at all. But yeah, we definitely have this thing that we went through together, this thing that we shared.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, going into it, we certainly had a few conversations about kind of the what ifs. And it's important, you know, it's dangerous to play the what if game too much, but we had to talk about, like, what if this doesn't work? What if, you know, one of us doesn't make it through the surgery? And those conversations they meant a lot to me. And I think really strengthened kind of our bond and our relationship. My biggest fear going in was that if I didn't make it, how she would feel. That would be a lot of responsibility that she would probably feel about that. Like, obviously I was worried, you know, if I die, my kids aren't going to have a father and all that stuff. Like, obviously you're going to think about, but like the one that kind of surprised me was how much I was worried about her feelings if it didn't go well for me. And then also, you know, there is always a chance that it's just not going to work.
Right.
Which was terrifying.
Yeah. I think that was her biggest concern. And I don't want to speak for her, but she did say that her biggest concern, one of her biggest concerns was, like, if you made this ginormous sacrifice and then her body rejected it or something. Mm-hmm. She said she would probably had a hard time with that one.
I would expect.
Yeah. But this is the thing, right? When you're being so selfless, but you're giving a sacrifice, you want to make sure that sacrifice manifests into, what's the right word here? Like, does what it's supposed to, like, is not for nothing. There's nothing worse than a sacrifice that amounts to nothing, right? So, yeah, I think I can totally see why those would be concerns for you. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that, I mean, but at the same time, like, when you meet a kidney surgeon or like a transplant surgeon, this is what they do on a Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
You know, like, going into the operating room, I was a little bit nervous before going into the operating room. As soon as I got in there, I was like, oh, they're all chatting about what they did on the weekend. This is not a big deal.
No.
Yeah. And that level of confidence and competence, and literally this is like, just what I do.
Yeah. You're probably his fourth one that week and it was Tuesday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
How about let's talk about your after the surgery. Like, what was the time between extraction from you and implantation in her?
Lunch hour.
Really? So
I went in at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
And she went in at 1 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the day, it was all complete.
Done. Yeah. Unreal. She was in the recovery room by 5:30 or 6 in the evening.
Wild.
And normally it doesn't actually take that long. It took a little extra time because I'm way bigger than her.
Mm.
Like even still, now that she's healthy, I'm more than double her weight. So my kidney was too big.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and they actually had to kind of change plans about where to put it into her,
Right.
so that it wouldn't get pinched.
Yeah. I learned that they actually don't remove the old kidneys.
That's right.
Yeah. That's so crazy to me. So were you guys in the recovery room together then?
Yeah, we didn't interact.
Okay.
So that was when my recovery started not going well, was in the recovery room. So I guess in the morning when I went in for the surgery, the anesthesiologist put me under, did the thing that they do, count backwards from 10, etc. And then woke me up after the surgery was done in the OR, as I guess is standard. I don't have any memory of that happening, but he said, oh yeah, you woke up and you were totally fine and it went well. And then they took me to the recovery room. And by the time I got to the recovery room, all of a sudden I was having all kinds of complications. My blood pressure was up like 40 points. My heart rate was at like 100 beats per minute or something, lying still.
Mm-hmm.
And I was spiking a big fever. And so my memory of waking up from this surgery was 3 nurses moving really fast. And I was like, oh, that's not what I was expecting.
That's not good. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, instead of the 1-on-1 nurse, I had 3-on-1. I thought, oh gosh, this isn't good. So they kept me in the recovery room for way longer than normal. And I was not well. Like I really couldn't interact much at all. They told me when she got in there, they said, yeah, Marsha's here and she's okay. And that was helpful, but I couldn't talk to each other or anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. Did they know what was wrong?
No. A couple of the doctors from the surgery came to try and figure out what was up and check on me and make sure I was okay. But they couldn't figure out what it was, because there's something with similar symptoms that I guess is pretty normal after a surgery. Not normal, but like not unexpected. But they ruled that out. And my guess is that I think I'd had a cold the week before. My guess is there was a little bit of virus left that said, oh, here we can attack or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. But it was not well.
Okay. Following that experience though, like once you were able to leave the hospital, were there any more complications after that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I got out of the hospital. So surgery was Tuesday. I left Friday morning and man, it was wild. Tuesday night, using the electric bed to sit up and get a drink of water was completely and utterly exhausting. Like I was done after doing that. Wednesday morning, I was able to stand up out of my bed with help. Wednesday night, I could walk to the end of the hall. Thursday, I was just like going for walks. Friday morning, I got up and like walked all around the hospital, went and saw Marsha, cried my eyes out when I saw her. And yeah, I was totally fine. Well, not totally fine, but like I can move around and like they happen so fast, right, that you get bounced back. And then, so this surgery all took place in Hamilton. My stepfather picked me up from the hospital and took me to him and my mom's place in Aurelia. And I hung out there for a few days before coming back home. Just wanted to be, within, a shorter proximity to the hospital where it all happened if something went wrong. And on day 8 post-surgery, we were actually getting ready to start coming to drive up here late on the weekend. So this was on a Wednesday. We were planning on leaving on the Friday to drive back up to Thunder Bay. But Wednesday I started having this weird feeling in the surgical area where the kidney had been taken. And I kept thinking, like, is this like nerves regrowing or like what's going on? Something's not right in there. But it doesn't hurt. It just feels weird. But then over the course of the day, it started to get a little bit kind of like painful. And then it was starting to cut my breathing a little bit short. And it got to the point in the evening where I could only inhale so far before I had like just unbelievable pain. And then if I could relax enough to exhale, pain would go away. Then I'd breathe in again, it would start to hurt, and I'd breathe out and be okay.
So this is every breath that you took?
Every breath.
Wow. And
it started getting kind of like progressively shorter how much I could breathe. And so I had some painkillers that they had given me from the hospital. So I tried taking one of those, didn't even touch it. So an hour later, I took another one, still nothing. And then when I couldn't even stand up kind of by 8 in the evening. And so my stepdad said, okay, I'm calling the ambulance. And the ambulance got there. And turns out I had a pulmonary embolism.
Dang.
Yeah. So
And
it's a blood clot that had, so it had been a blood clot in my leg that had broken up. And they said it was like shrapnel from the blood clot had all got caught in my lungs, particularly in the left one. And it could be fatal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard those hurt. Even the ones in your legs are painful.
I didn't know pain could feel like that. Honestly, it was the worst pain I've ever imagined. And little side story, when I got into the ambulance, they said, okay, what have you taken? I said, I took some Dilaudid that they gave me at the hospital. And they said, oh no, okay, that means we can't give you morphine because they're the same family of drugs. But then the one paramedic said, but it's your lucky day. My partner here is an advanced care paramedic and she can give you fentanyl. I was like, oh geez. Okay.
Yeah.
I completely understand why there is a fentanyl epidemic out there.
Totally.
Because by the time her thumb had finished pushing the syringe in, all the pain was gone. It wasn't even just like, feeling better. It was like, it was all gone. I was ready to get up and go running. Like, it felt great. And then 15 minutes later, it's like I ran into a wall and it was back.
No way.
It's that fast.
Wow.
Yeah. So took me to the hospital and got me into somehow at the height of the pandemic, I had a private room in the ER. Yeah, they tend to roll out the red carpet a little bit.
Yeah.
When you're in that situation.
Wow. Yeah, well, that's unfortunate because the surgery is one thing, but I always find the recovery the hardest part of any kind of procedure, especially when something unexpected happens. Oh, that can be so deflating.
Yeah, and I think now looking back at it, so they tell you to book like 6 to 10 weeks off work. I was 7 months before I was able to really do anything again. Yeah.
What was it?
So I think part of my issue was that I didn't react well to the anesthetic. I think it stuck around for a long time, the after effects of that, because I had brain fog pretty solid. So the surgery was November 30th, and I still was experiencing like pretty significant brain fog in June.
And you hadn't taken it so that would have been what, 7 months?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the other thing I think that happened is that I think the embolism set me back a lot farther than we kind of initially thought. Because, I had the embolism, went to the hospital, they pumped me full of some drugs, put me on a blood thinner, and never had any symptom of that, like direct symptom of that again. But I think that really just made my head, any progress that I had made in healing, I think was kind of set right back because now my body was dealing with that as well.
Interesting. Of the whole process, what would you say was the hardest part? Because it seems like the surgery part was
the everything before was easy.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah, like the getting tested, saying I'm going to do it, none of that was a problem.
Yeah.
The hardest part in the lead up was talking to my kids about, the reality that I might not make it. My daughter, of course, teared up a little bit, and my son looked at me and goes, I started preparing for this the day you said you were getting tested. I was like, come on.
Wow. And how old would they have been at that time?
They were 9 and 11.
Okay.
So that was hard emotionally, but also like they were pretty excited about it and they understood why I was doing this. The hardest part after, I wouldn't say there was a hardest day. There were a lot of moments during the like 6 or 7 months post-op where I wasn't making the progress that I wanted to be making. I was trying to like get back to normal life, trying to run, trying to play sports, whatever. And I just couldn't do it. And I'm sure you notice the same thing after your surgery, that you make noticeable progress every single day for the first couple of weeks. And then it's like, Am I improving at all?
Yeah.
That when that noticeable change stops happening and it's more incremental and sort of slow change, that's hard.
I can imagine because I think maybe physiologically you feel okay,
Yeah.
but when it's time to engage with the activity, your body's like, no.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And for me, it was not that I was worried about any kind of injury or anything like that. When I do anything where there's a chance of a crash, like mountain biking, skiing, basketball, whatever, frisbee, I wear like a padded shirt over my remaining kidney,
Mhm.
just in case. Um, but yeah, I'm not worried about that kind of thing being an issue. It was really though that as soon as my heart rate would get up, it would stay there, and I couldn't calm down. So I'd have to stop for like way longer than it took me to get the heart rate up. I'd have to stop and wait and let it come back down. And
Mhm.
that was really frustrating because I'd feel like, oh yeah, I feel great. I can go do something. And then I couldn't.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was difficult and kind of scary because it was like, I was supposed to be better a while ago.
for sure. Does anything from this whole process still live with you in like a dark way? Do you feel like you have any psychological or emotional uneasiness about what you experienced?
No, it's actually been quite the opposite. It really like I for my whole life I've dealt with anxiety and depression, more anxiety than depression. Um, and this has having done this, having lived through this, has I don't want to say been a cure, but it sure has helped. Um, my mental health, like without having to put anything into maintaining it, has been better since. I have obviously had ups and downs, and like life still happens. Um, but I think that having gone through that and lived through that and experienced what I experienced, I have a lot more confidence in my own resilience now
Hmm.
than I did before. Um, and I know that something that I did really, really, really mattered.
Hmm. Was that the root of your depression and anxiety before, you think?
Nope.
No?
No, but it helps to know that,
Yeah.
I've made a massive difference. And especially whenever I see or do a Zoom call or whatever with Marsha and her family, like her kids have their mom back, and
And you
I
were a
couldn't
big part
ask,
of
that's
that.
it. I couldn't ask for anything more than to have been part of that process.
Yeah.
And also this was definitely like an expression of faith for
Mhm.
me in a number of ways, but mostly just, I believe we're supposed to share. And that's what this was about.
Absolutely. The greatest gift to yourself is to give to others. Apparently, according to like, I don't want to say biblical teachings, but mostly like spiritual teachings worldwide, I would say that's a fundamental tenet. And I think that's a real thing.
I
So,
agree. I'm walking proof that absolutely
mhm,
life gets better when you help somebody else.
good. It's funny because after I spoke with Marcia, I've been thinking about this, in preparing for our talk with you. And it's funny, like, I think colloquially, the expression that shows like the greatest love for someone is like, man, I'd give a kidney for that guy,
Yeah.
right?
So I watched a lot of TV in the recovery period there. And I was constantly like, what the heck? I didn't notice this before. But yeah, every TV show has somebody talking about that.
Yeah.
It's not like you gave up a kidney.
So in a way, it's kind of silly and, comical, but to give up an organ for another person, yeah, I think it is definitely an expression of a huge expression of appreciation for that person. Um, I don't know how much you know about, or how much you've looked into, or how exposed you are to the world of people who are in need of kidneys or organs, but I would bet that it'd be very difficult for those people who just don't have loved ones willing to give up a kidney. It's got to be tough to be on a list waiting for kidneys. Like, do you know much about how
Yep.
that world works?
A little bit. So I volunteer with an organization called the Transplant Ambassador Program.
That's pretty cool.
It's really neat. And essentially try to help people get living donors. Because so you can donate a kidney or liver from a living donor can do a kidney or liver donation. Any other organ has to come from a cadaver. And the outcome.
Wait. How do you
You
give the
portion.
liver?
They'll take a portion and it'll regenerate.
You're kidding.
Is wild. So apparently a liver donor, they'll take up to 2/3 of your liver, and 6 to 8 weeks since it's regenerated back to the original volume.
So why aren't we all donating pieces of our liver?
This is my question.
Huh. I guess most people just don't know that. I didn't know that.
100%. Yeah. Tons of people just don't know. And we often, so what I've learned through kind of volunteering with this organization is that until you have somebody ask you or tell you that they need this, you have no idea that there's a need.
Mm-hmm.
And you have no idea that it's a possibility. And you certainly wouldn't think that it's something you can do because I'm just me. I'm just a regular person and you have to be a hero. You don't. You just have to have a working organ.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so if you can get a living donor, the outcomes are way better. Kidneys and livers donated from living donors last a lot longer before they need a new ones, because a donated kidney, they tell you to expect kind of 12 to 15 years out of it. One from a living donor lasts much, much longer, or can last a lot longer. So that's one of the major benefits to it. You also then don't have to be on the list, because like you say, living on that list is awful. And all that time you're living on dialysis, which is not a way to live.
No, it takes 4 hours, and some people are doing it every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what our kidneys do for us is they filter our blood. And if they're not working, we're essentially poisoning ourselves from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you go and get dialysis, it cleans out all the blood and removes all those toxins. So you feel great as soon as you're done. But then immediately your body starts poisoning itself again. And so, if you're going every other day, if you go on Monday, by the time you get there Wednesday, you feel like absolute garbage.
Yeah.
And probably most of Tuesday, you didn't feel good.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I've learned through working with TAP, they call it, is the biggest barrier to people getting donors is that they don't know how to ask. Because can you imagine asking somebody for that? Like, how would you do that? I don't know how you had to have that conversation. And so we were lucky that Marcia never had to ask. She just put it out there, said, hey, I've just been told that I'm going to need this. And a bunch of us were like, okay, well, we kind of connected the dots and thought, okay, well, if she's going to need it, someone's going to have to give it.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of patients are unwilling to put that on anyone, and fair enough.
Yeah. I think part of it is maybe these individuals asking for kidneys prior to having kidney issues or liver issues, they wouldn't have thought about giving one themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess maybe they're in a position where it's like, well, how can I ask for something that I'm not sure that I would have given anyway?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. I hadn't thought of that, but I think that's probably pretty on point.
And then the other side of it is, what if it's a no? You'd probably ask someone that you'd start closest to you.
Yep.
And if the person closest to you says no, then it makes asking further down the line even more difficult, because now you're going more distal away from your connection, right? Yep. So I think the fear of that no too is
huge.
Is probably a big deal. But and
the fear that we talked about before that Marcia had of like, what if it doesn't work?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What works really well, and if anyone listening knows someone or is going through this, the way you ask is you just put it out there. You don't ask anyone specifically. You don't say, hey, can I have your kidney? You just say, I need a kidney. I've been told this. I met a donor who found out that their recipient needed a kidney because they put a poster up in the lunchroom at work.
No way.
Yeah.
So how does one, if someone is interested in donating, how does one begin that process of making their organs available?
So we all can do it through beadonor.ca. When you get a driver's license, they ask you if you die, can your organs be donated? So that's where you opt in there. You can also just Google kidney donation Ontario, kidney donation Canada, and probably best if you put a location. So kidney donation, Ontario, Hamilton, wherever the city is, to find out where the nearest center is, because not every hospital does this. London, Hamilton, Toronto, Ottawa in Ontario, I think all have centers that do the transplants.
Mm-hmm.
And just honestly reach out, call
Okay.
call the transplant center and say, I'm interested in learning more.
Right.
And you are never committed until the anesthetic goes in your arm. You're never committed. You can always back out at any time, and they won't ever question it. And they won't ever tell the recipient why you backed out. You always, always, always have the opportunity to say, you know what, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. But finding out if you're able to do it, doesn't hurt and is worth doing.
Totally. I'm usually against, like, it feels icky to me to market things. When I'm given a platform, I don't like marketing things. And I'd hate to use this podcast as like a marketing platform for anything.
Yeah.
But this is definitely something that I can 100% get behind. The donation of a kidney, the donation of a liver, the donation of blood. Yeah, these are things that, like, I've given blood before. I probably don't give as much blood as I should.
Well, we can't give blood here.
Interesting. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, they don't. There's no center here anymore.
That's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think if it is available, if it is possible, if it is convenient for most of us, I think, just as how some people see volunteering as a duty,
mm-hmm.
you could almost throw this in a similar category, right? Because the impacts are massive. You're giving people another chance at life.
Yeah. Yeah, go find out if you can. And whether it's liver, whether it's kidney, whether it's blood, whether like all those things, you really actually, like you say, are giving somebody another chance at actually being alive. And people say, wow, you saved her life. And I say, well, yeah, sort of. It's not that if she didn't get the kidney that day, she was going to die that day. But she only had 13 and a half years of dialysis left.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, then what? She was 35. So at 50, she knew that if she didn't get a kidney, she was going to live till 50.
Mm-hmm.
Now she's got,
right,
65 at least, which we know. And I've had a lot of people since, and actually my wife has had a lot of people, who hear my story and are asking her about it, saying, I would never do that. I would never give my kidney to my sister, brother, whoever, because I don't trust that they would take care of it. And it's like, I get that. And that's why I've had to convince myself to not think of it as my kidney anymore. Because once it was out of me, it's in her.
Yeah.
It's hers. And I no longer have control over it. And she is still a person who I care about, who should have choice in her life.
Right.
So you don't get a say after it's done. And that's hard. And I can understand why people would have a hard time with that concept.
Yeah. I mean, if you donated a kidney, and you did, and you saw the person you donated that kidney eating a salty bag of chips, maybe it could feel like that person was ungrateful for the sacrifice you made. But as you said, if you are still hanging on to that kidney like it's yours, it's probably best you don't donate.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Or you need to spend some time and get to the point where you can accept that it's not yours.
Yeah.
That in itself is a really valuable exercise that would make doing this completely worthwhile, to be able to kind of get outside of yourself a little bit.
For sure.
I mean, the fact that she can now eat potato chips, I look at it as she gets to live her life, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Right.
Because she couldn't, right? A pre-transplant diet is pretty restrictive. I don't know if she got into what she was able to eat, what she wasn't able to eat. There's a lot of stuff she was not able to eat. Like, potatoes being a big one, bananas being anything with potassium.
Oh my gosh.
She couldn't eat for a very long time.
That's everything. oranges
Yep.
and yeah, crazy.
Yeah. So, the fact that she gets to do that now, her first meal of potatoes, she was pretty excited about.
Nice. It's interesting though, because you were describing how when I said she gets her life back, I think so one way to look at it is like you've added years to her life, right?
Mhm.
But another way of looking at it, as you're just alluding to, was quality of life. In my mind, is more life than actually the number of years, right?
100%.
Quality of life while you're on dialysis, especially if you're doing it every day, absolutely plummets. She described her kids and her husband going for like a bike ride or something, and
Mhm.
she had to skip out on many of those because she had to do this dialysis thing, right? So
Or
I
like bedtime,
yeah,
like everything. Just
totally.
normal life couldn't happen.
Yeah. So there's the like life in terms of number of years, but there's also life in terms of time spent living, right? So yeah, I think if one feels the call to donate liver, kidney, or just even find out more about it, because I think that's always the first step, just to learn a little more about what it is and what it would entail. Because I didn't know that having one kidney, there's that little risk
Yeah.
long term. I didn't know your liver regenerated.
Yeah. It's not that. So right, there's multiple lobes in your liver, right? So if they take a whole lobe, that lobe that's gone is gone,
Mm-hmm.
but what's left will expand to fill the space.
Interesting.
So it still works.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Um,
And it depends on who you're giving to. So I've met a few people who have done both kidney and liver, who have donated both. And the one was saying that she donated her liver to a 2-year-old. So they took a very tiny piece is all that they needed. So her recovery on that was actually pretty quick.
mhm.
Yeah. And then I met another guy who gave to his adult brother. And so, they took 2/3 of his
Yeah.
liver.
Wild. Yeah, I've learned a ton today. I'm wondering, Richard, because you know what it's well, it seems like your recovery was not as smooth as it could have gone.
Mhm.
And what should have taken 6 to 8 weeks took 7 months. And I'm sure in those 7 months you had some pretty dark days, and maybe that section of time was the giant that you were facing.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if there was anything you learned during that time period that you could uh, impart on someone who's probably going through a hard time or struggling, or maybe it's someone who's waiting for an organ, and just that waiting process is difficult, or if it's someone who's just sad, depressed,
Yeah.
anxious.
So yeah, I've kind of two parts to this answer. One is we're all capable of so much more than we let ourselves think. And right now is not forever, right? So the way you're feeling right now, it doesn't necessarily have to be the way that you will feel forever. And when we are up against a giant, as you put it, it often feels like this will never end. But that doesn't have to be the case. And I get really angry when I hear people saying, "Oh, just change your attitude." That's not what it's about. But you do get to choose how you react.
Mm-hmm.
And you do get to choose whether you're going to have hope or not. And you do get to choose if you're going to ask for help. And asking for help is really, really, really hard, especially today. For some reason, like these days, it's this idea of self-sufficiency is so popular. And I think that's dangerous, and I think it's wrong, and I think it's not how we were built. We're made to work together and to help each other. That's the one part. The other part of my answer starts 7 years ago, so 5 years before the transplant, when my friend Andrew started bugging me at lunch hour. We both worked at the university, and he was bored. And so he started bugging me at lunch hour, like, come running with me, come running with me, come running with me. And I did not like running. I had never been into running. I was uninterested, but he was enough of a pest that I finally said, fine,
Mm-hmm.
I'll go out with you. And I was not in good shape. I was pretty classic middle-aged or early middle-aged, dad who could go for a hike, but then I'd be in pain for 3 days after.
Yeah.
But, a tough it out kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm right there, man.
And he, Andrew pushed and finally got me excited about it and got me to follow a training program. And I went from, there's no way I could, I went from my first run was 1,600 meters and it took me like half an hour. It was a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And a year to the day after that first run, I ran my first ultra, which was 43 kilometers on the Superior Hiking Trail. And when I say ran, that's a very loose term. It took me 8 hours, but whatever. I moved and I did it, and it was pretty exciting. And had he not pestered me to get out on the trail at the university on my lunch hour with him, there's no way I would have been able to donate to Marcia.
Right.
So take care of yourself. If I had not been able to donate because my blood pressure was too high, that's where I think I would not have been able to live with myself.
Right.
I hadn't taken good enough care of myself to be able to help her. Would have just crushed me. So I'm so thankful to Andrew for having dragged me out to get healthy and taught me to take my own health seriously, because that meant that I got to do this and have this incredible experience and seize this amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
And so to people who are struggling and in a dark place or waiting for their Andrew to show up, do something.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go out and run a marathon, but do something. Do something that's going to be good for you. And that can be as little as, drink a glass of water instead of a glass of Coke. It can be as simple as open the curtains, wherever you're at, just do something good for yourself.
Right. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
That's it. And then my rules for life and learning to ski, which I teach my ski students, are: number 1, it's supposed to be fun. Number 2, if you're not falling, you're not learning. Screw stuff up all the time. Number 3, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Progress, like you say, 1,000 miles begins with a single step. It doesn't have to be, you don't go from nothing to everything. You have to take the journey. And my last rule, which I just love, is there's no win in comparison. Don't look at other people. Look at yourself and see what you can do and what you would like to do. Those are my thoughts.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Rich, for taking the time to share your experience and your knowledge. I learned a ton. I didn't know this much about the liver donation in particular. I did not know that.
So I'm on a quest right now to get super fit again so that I can become a liver donor.
Yeah. Awesome.
I didn't know that you could do both. And I met someone who had done both. I thought, amazing.
Yeah.
Let's go.
There you go. Awesome. I was like, where's this guy going with this running story? And then you tied it in so nicely at the end there. No, that was good. I am very inspired. I'm not saying I'm going to go donate a kidney tomorrow, but I'm at least asking myself, why not?
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good question.
But yeah, we've got things we got to do and places we got to be. Thank you for talking, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Thanks again for listening and for supporting the show. Stay tuned for more empowering stories. If you have any questions for the guests or feedback for the show, email them to facinggiantspodcast@gmail.com. And be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram as well.